Welcome to the third episode of our creative writing workshop, also known as the Online Novel Writing Workshop. Today, we're delving into a critical aspect of novel writing, the story. In previous episodes, we explored the key questions. Why am I writing? And what do I want to write about? These are essential questions every writer should ask before embarking on their creative journey. However, now we approach the third and arguably most challenging question. How do I write? Finding your idea and developing it. Before discussing how to write a story, it's important to emphasize that writing a novel, short story, or even an essay requires one crucial element, a clear, coherent idea. You must have an idea you can shape, control, and narrate in a way that keeps your readers hooked. This idea is the seed from which your entire story will grow, and it forms the basis for everything you'll write thereafter. Without a clear idea, your writing may lack focus, direction, or purpose. But once you have that idea, once it's vivid and fully realized in your mind, you're ready to take the next steps toward constructing your story. The first thing to understand is that a story is not just a random collection of events. It's a structured narrative with a beginning, middle, and end. So, how do we take this idea and turn it into a compelling story? That's what we're about to explore. The story as the foundation of your novel. The story is essentially the dramatic development that unfolds throughout your novel. It's the backbone of your narrative, the series of events and character choices that drive the action forward. This is true whether you're writing a novel, short story, personal essay, or even a blog post. At the heart of every piece of writing is a story, a journey the reader is taken on. Whether you're telling the story of a detective solving a crime, a young woman falling in love, or a man struggling to find his place in the world, the structure of the story remains similar. For those who don't intend to write a novel, but are still following this workshop, fear not, you'll still benefit greatly from understanding how stories work. Whether you're writing short stories, personal reflections, or even essays, the techniques we discuss will be applicable. At its core, any piece of writing requires a central idea that is presented and developed in a specific, coherent order. Understanding how to construct a story and build dramatic tension will serve you well, regardless of the form your writing takes. How to turn your idea into a story. So let's get practical. Let's say you have an idea for a novel. How do you transform this idea into a story? The story is essentially your idea expanded from something as brief as a single sentence into a fuller narrative. A good exercise is to first write down your idea in 50 words or less. This will help you summarize the core concept in a concise way. For example, your story idea might be, where a man discovers his neighbors are actually ghosts haunting the apartment building he lives in, and he must figure out how to free them. Once you've summarized your idea, the next step is to expand it into a story. The story will be more detailed than your idea, but still relatively short, 2 to 3 pages at most. Think of this as the blueprint for your novel. It outlines the major events and turning points that will shape your narrative, the elements of a story. Now, let's break down how to build a story, starting with the introduction. The first part of your story should introduce the reader to the world in which your characters live. This is the who, where, and what of your novel. Who are the main characters? Where are they located? What is happening in their lives? This introductory phase is crucial because it sets the stage for everything that follows. For example, let's say you're writing a detective novel. In the beginning, you might introduce the protagonist, a seasoned detective living in a small, quiet town. The reader needs to know who this character is, what motivates them, what their daily life is like, and what their challenges might be. This introduction doesn't need to be long or overly detailed, but it should give the reader a sense of who the main characters are and what their world looks like. After the introduction, we move to the inciting event. This is the pivotal moment that disrupts the character's world and propels the story forward. In the case of our detective novel, this might be when the detective receives a call about a strange and unsettling case unlike anything they've dealt with before. This event sets the protagonist on a new path, and their journey begins. It's important to note that the inciting event shouldn't happen too early or too late in the story. If it happens in the first few sentences, the reader won't have enough time to get invested in the characters or setting. On the other hand, if it happens too late, say, after 50 or 100 pages, the reader might lose interest before the real action begins. A well-timed inciting event ensures the reader is engaged and eager to see what happens next. The protagonist's journey. After the inciting event, the protagonist is faced with a choice. They must decide whether to continue down this new path or turn back and return to their old life. This decision is often made under pressure or emotional strain. The protagonist might be hesitant, scared, or unsure of what to do, but ultimately, they must make a choice. In our detective novel, for example, the protagonist might be reluctant to take on the new case because it seems dangerous or out of their comfort zone. However, their curiosity or sense of duty compels them to move forward. This choice marks a turning point in the story. It's the moment when the protagonist truly begins their journey. As the story progresses, the protagonist encounters obstacles, challenges, and complications that make their journey more difficult. These obstacles might be external, for example, a villain, or antagonist, or internal, for example, self-doubt or fear. Regardless, the protagonist must navigate these challenges in order to reach their goal. The point of no return. Halfway through the story, the protagonist reaches what we call the point of no return. This is the moment when they realize they can no longer go back to their old life. They are fully committed to their journey, whether they like it or not. The protagonist may feel overwhelmed or scared, but they know they must press on. In the case of our detective novel, this might be the moment when the protagonist uncovers a shocking piece of evidence that changes everything. They realize that they are in too deep and must see the case through to the end, no matter the cost, building tension and raising the stakes. After the midpoint, the story's tension begins to rise. The protagonist faces increasingly difficult challenges, and the stakes become higher. In our detective novel, this might involve a series of dangerous encounters with a villain, or the protagonist might discover that their own life is in danger. As the tension builds, the protagonist becomes more determined to reach their goal. They may experience moments of doubt or fear, but they also become stronger and more resilient. The reader is fully engaged at this point, eager to see how the story will unfold. The false resolution and final twist. Near the end of the story, the protagonist reaches what seems like a resolution. They may believe they have solved the case, overcome the villain, or achieved their goal. However, this is often a false resolution, a moment when the protagonist thinks the story is over, but it's not. In our detective novel, this might be when the protagonist arrests the wrong person, only to realize that the true villain is still at large. The false resolution is followed by a final twist or revelation that brings the story to its true conclusion. This twist should be unexpected, also logical. It should make sense within the context of the story, but still surprise the reader. In our detective novel, the final twist might reveal a hidden connection between the protagonist and the villain, or it might involve a shocking betrayal by a trusted ally. Conclusion: in this workshop, we've covered the essential elements of storytelling, from the inciting event to the point of no return, and from building tension to crafting a satisfying resolution. The most important thing to remember is that a good story is about more than just a sequence of events. It's about creating dramatic tension that keeps the reader engaged from beginning to end. As you continue writing your own stories, keep these principles in mind. Think about how you can structure your story to create maximum impact. And most importantly, remember that writing is a journey. The more you practice, the better you'll become. In the next episode of our workshop, we'll dive deeper into the topic of character development. Stay tuned.